Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 7 of FX and Hulu's Alien Earth entitled Emergence. And this was another wild ride, a mix of tense moments, character betrayals, and of course more xenomorph chaos. And while I definitely found it entertaining, as I have every episode of this season, I still feel like this show is moving forward at a snail's pace. And I'm going to get into it more as we break it down, but I kind of wanted to foreshadow that a little bit right now. So we open with Slightly hiding Arthur under his bed while the face hugger is still attached to Arthur's face. And he even tries feeding Arthur through it, underneath it, I don't know, and it tightens its grip on Arthur's neck. Smee shows up and he spots Arthur's arm under the bed, which forces Slightly to share the fact that Morrow has blackmailed him and to request Smee's help. Slightly sells the lie that Arthur's going to be fine, so Smee reluctantly agrees to help take Arthur to the beach. We, of course, know that Arthur is toast, but the vast majority of this season has been building up to how Morrow's manipulation of Slightly was going to play out. So I was excited to see what was going to happen once they got Arthur to Morrow at the beach. So Kirsch shows up in the lab. He sees all of the chaos. He sees a dead Isaac / Toodles, and the guy doesn't flinch. He just calls in reinforcements, clears the scene out. Meanwhile, Boy Cavalier finds out that Toodles / Isaac can't be repaired. That means that's $6 billion down the tube. That's quite a bit of money. So Boy Cavalier lays down new rules. No more kids in the lab, except, of course, his prize pupil, Wendy. Kirsch also confirms my earlier suspicion, which, again, felt kind of obvious at the time, but that the sheep isn't just acting randomly. It's intentional with what it was doing. He shows Boy Cavalier the tape of the sheep scaring the shit out of me, and the intentionality of the sheep's actions excites Boy Cavalier. Wendy then arrives to also see the dead Isaac / Toodles and is shocked, pissed, and wants to tell the others, but Boy Cavalier shuts that down. He doesn't want to cause a panic. What really stood out is that Wendy, as she's leaving this room, she talks to the xenomorph and it responds by hitting the glass. And she may not understand what is happening between her and the xenomorph, but this moment feels like the seed of something bigger. Like we started off with, hey, maybe there's some kind of connection. Now there's very clear communication. At the same time, this show's been building up the connection between Wendy and the xenomorph since episode 1, and I don't really feel any closer to understanding what the connection is. I'm certain we'll probably learn it in the finale, but they've really spent the whole season edging us on what the connection is, and I want to know what happened in that initial confrontation that we didn't see behind that door with Herman on the outside. But this season has spent so much time showcasing that there is a connection without even touching on what it is, that at this point, like my interest in it starting to wane. Like I care, but I'm just like, okay, like I said, you've been edging us all season that there's some sort of connection. I don't know what it is. I see it getting stronger, but I'm 0% more in tune with what that connection is. I'm kind of over it. But let me pause here. What do you guys think about Wendy's connection to the xenomorph? Like, am I doing too much? But like, are you frustrated with it too? Like, do you think she's bonding with it? Is it manipulating her? Do you even still care? Let me know in the comments. Let me know I'm not tripping here, but I'm kind of over it. Moving on, Wendy leaves the lab angrily, and Boy Cavalier tells Kirsch to find the others before she does, and that's when they learn that Arthur has disabled the trackers in the other kids. Meanwhile, Herman and Wendy decide to leave, and Wendy wants to gather the others. And they start with Nibs, and Curly is in Nibs' room as well. And Curly's all in on the Prodigy cult, unsurprisingly, and she's clearly still jealous of Wendy, so she's not going to go, but she promises she's not going to snitch, which I think she's also not being truthful about. And as they're leaving, Wendy tinkers with like the security monitors in the room, and she unlocks the door holding the now grown xenomorph that she just had a conversation with moments earlier. The reason that she did this is unclear at the time, but it comes to light. Of note here, Wendy says she wanted to go find the others, and at no point does she or anybody suggest looking for Smee or Slightly. I guess they only cared about the lost girls, but just pointing that out. Speaking of Smee and Slightly, they're on their way to take Arthur's body tomorrow now, and this is when Kirsch finally confronts them about what they've been doing. Everyone here should think that the jig is up. I did, but instead of stopping them, he helps move Arthur along. This raised the question at the time, at least for me, was Kirsch helping them because he is like kind of like a bad guy, like he wants to help get the face hugger out of the building too? Or was he helping facilitate this escape so he could continue to stay ahead of Morrow and ultimately figure out and stop his plan? Turns out it's the latter. But Smea slightly later come across a security team and they hide in the bushes with Arthur's body and have the same problem with this scene that I had with all of episode 5. There was 0.00% tension for me in this scene because if you watch the movie, you knew that Arthur was going to pop up perfectly fine, and that's exactly what happened. And I continue to be befuddled by why this show has moments or an entire episode, like episode 5, where it follows so closely in the footsteps of the original film. Like, yeah, there's going to be people who haven't seen it or haven't seen it in a long time, and those people will still be impressed with those scenes. But if you do something unique that's never been done before, or at least is slightly different from what the movie did, you can impress everybody. Like, instead of taking people like me who recently watched the movie out of the episode by doing something exactly the same as something I just watched recently. Like, all of this was it wasn't even predictable. Like, it was written in stone. Like, I knew, like, there was nothing there for me in these scenes because I knew exactly what was going to happen. Arthur was going to appear fine, and the baby xenomorph was going to burst out of his body. So during this sequence, all I did was sit there and wait for the inevitable rather than being nervous about what might happen or what could happen. And when everything played out exactly as I expected with nary a deviation, I, as I'm sure many others were as well, was underwhelmed. And that could have been avoided. So like I said, the xenomorph bursts out of Arthur's body, runs into the woods, and Arthur's body ultimately ends up being left in the water to sink once Morrow arrives. The baby xenomorph that escaped Arthur's body is captured in a net. We don't know by who at the time, but then when Morrow arrives at the facility with the captured Smee and Slightly in tow, Kirsch is right there waiting for them with the baby xenomorph in a little dog baskets, and they bringing dogs to the airport. He tells everyone to lower their weapons because nobody likes a sore loser. And again, you cannot tell me that this is not Raylan Givens. But the problem here is this reveal too, it felt underwhelming. Like, after all of that slow burn scheming of Kirsch listening to all this shit and doing absolutely nothing, and this subplot being stretched out over the course of the entire season, having it end in the very obvious direction, like the most obvious way that this could go, having it end that way feels like a wonderful meal that you had, and then the dessert being like a wet fart or something like that. Like I clearly set my expectations too high for where that subplot was going, and ultimately I ended up pretty disappointed, just like I did with the Morrow and Kirsch elevator scene. Like, I mistakenly thought that the Morrow Kirsch subplot was gonna go somewhere fucking awesome, and I was clearly very wrong about that. It went in the most obvious direction, and it took long as fuck to get there. Like, pretty big letdown, honestly. Back at Prodigy, Boy Cavalier is now obsessed with the eyeball sheep. He writes the number 3.14 representing pi on his hand, and he asks the sheep to tell him the next 3 numbers. After the sheep correctly stomps out the next 2 digits that would follow, the sheep then hilariously shits on the floor as if to say, I've already proved time and time again that I'm smart. Now eat shit, you asshole. Boy Cavalier openly wishes that the sheep could talk, but instead comes up with the idea of putting the alien into a human body with a low IQ so he can see how much the alien improves that dumb person's mental capacity. He says he knows the perfect person for this, but he doesn't say who it is. Let me know in the comments who you think it is and why it's Hermit. Meanwhile, Wendy, Hermit, and Nibs are heading toward a boat to leave the island, and they are set upon by a security team yet again. And now here's the moment that surpassed my expectations. Wendy's been communicating with the xenomorph for a while, but that communication takes a wildly exciting turn when she actually summons the xenomorph that she had freed earlier. And one of the season's best and most brutal scenes, the xenomorph slaughters this entire security team. And then it treats Wendy like she's its mother, like allowing her to, what I thought was about to be petted, but it's more so kind of like wipe blood from it, which I think is probably the alien version of petting it. Like, you can wipe off all my murder blood. It's the same as being petted. Probably makes the alien feel the same way. She speaks to it again. She's not even exactly sure what she said to it. She's like, I think I told it to hide and follow. I don't know. But that I think I think it does a lot of heavy lifting there. Like, is she not in control of what she's saying to where she's just saying stuff and she don't know what it means, or she thinks she knows what it means? Like I said earlier, it makes me wonder, is the alien manipulating her? They continue on and finally make it to the boat, but are again surrounded by security, led by Hermit's two coworkers. One of the security guys throws Nib's stuffed animal into the water, so she justifiably rips that guy's jaw out of his head because fuck that guy. Wendy summons the xenomorph again, but before it arrives, one of the security people shoots Nibs. Like, Nib starts to, well, she shoots Nibs. I can't remember if it was like a gunshot wound or whatever, but Nib starts to kill that woman, and then she's put down by Hermit, but it's like with electrocution or something like that. And the episode ends with Wendy screaming furiously at Hermit as some oddly out of place metal music plays. I thought that was weird, but like, this was an entertaining episode. It had its moments. It was brutal, action packed, some tense standoffs, all that's good stuff. But my issue remains, like, 7 episodes in, I don't know where this show is going. It feels like things happening rather than a clear story that's building towards something. Like Kirsch's long game, it amounted to a trap for Morrow, but that wasn't. I mean, that was the obvious direction to take it, but that's not the payoff that I was hoping for. Entering into the finale, the rivalry they teased early on between Wendy and Curly has gone nowhere. And while the Xenomorph / Wendy connection is intriguing, it's still vague. With I think one episode left in the season. Honestly, I wonder if Alien as a concept just works better in short form. Like a 2-hour movie, great. 8 hours of TV, I feel like it's now starting to drag. Like, not now. I feel like it's weird. Okay, so I've enjoyed almost every episode, but the lack of character depth is keeping me from being fully invested. Compare this to something like Task, which lacks the action of this show, but does such incredible character work that after only 2 episodes, it's exponentially better than this show. But as for the finale, here are a few lingering questions. Again, what's the true connection between Wendy and the Xenomorph? What did Boy Cavalier mean by wanting to affect a low IQ human? And why is that going to be Hermit? Who or what is Morrow's target 2? He says, after the Xenomorph that burst out of Arthur's body escapes, he's like, all right, target 1, we can't get that one. Move on to target 2. What's target 2? Will the kids actually escape the island? Honestly, I'm not all that excited for answers, and I have low expectations for even receiving all of them, but I'll definitely be watching to see how it wraps up. I guess the best way of putting this is like, the phrase, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This show feels like the opposite. It feels like the parts are great, but when you put the whole thing together, the whole of this show has, I think, been pretty underwhelming at this point. It's weird to like essentially I would say praise, but like I spoke highly of every episode, even really the one that I didn't like. I was like, I can understand why everybody would think this is the shit. But like overall, like as a show, I'm just kind of feeling like there's a whole lot that either hasn't happened, been dragged out, or has ended in an underwhelming fashion. So let me know what you thought in the comments. Like the channel, subscribe, share to your social media, join the Discord, join the conversation. And until next time, peace.